The Ten Commandments, the most human, man-made, self-aggrandizing nonsense ever written down onto tablets by an infantile, authoritarian moron, meant to control morons even dumber than it itself. Let's take a quick look at this childish fiction. Number 1. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. This sounds like a spoiled 2-year-old who doesn't want anyone else to play with its blocks. It's usually the child that's relegated to the corner until it actually learns how to behave. The men responsible for writing this garbage were self-centered, egotistic, and authoritarian, using it to control the masses of ill-informed, uneducated morons. Now let's take a look at the second commandment. More self-centered, self-aggrandizing bullshit. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. The men who wrote this garbage were so egocentric, so incredibly self-centered, that they didn't want others to be carving any images of anything they might consider beautiful, or wonderful, or spiritually enlightening, like that of a donkey's foot, or maybe the bust of a woman. This passage is so deranged, so jealous, and so incredibly infantile. Hardly the work of something superior. And number 3. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. And yet more self-aggrandizing bullshit. The creeps who wrote this nonsense were so incredibly sick, so disturbed, and so self-involved, they wanted everything to revolve around their phony creation. And they wanted to scare people with their phony creation. How pitiful. Number 4. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Another meaningless contribution. There are 7 days in a week, and no one is more significant than any other. It's simply just a human calendar in observance of the natural laws of physics. Number 5. Honor thy father and thy mother. It's interesting the order that these are in, because the mother carries the child for 9 months. But it's honor thy father first, and then thy mother. Obviously, this was written by men. Anyone who's read the Bible would know that this phony God creation despises women, yet they're the ones who carry the babies on the planet and give birth. This is not a bad sentiment, but it's really of no use at all, and it's hardly a divine recommendation. It's simply common sense. Even a Christian would know that innately. Number 6. Thou shalt not kill. Well, this is a curious addition, since the Bible itself is one of the most murderous books on the planet. Here's a little gem of morality about killing, straight from the Bible. The people of Samaria must bear the consequences of their guilt, because they rebelled against their God. They will be killed by an invading army, their little ones dashed to death against the ground, their pregnant women ripped open by swords. This seems to be slightly opposed to the particular commandment, thou shalt not kill, which was written by men, just like Hosea 13:16 from the Bible was written by men. And it has no continuity editor and poor editing in the first place. Number 7. Thou shalt not commit adultery. What sage-like wisdom we have here! Another construct of men, since animals are very rarely monogamous, and humans are actually animals. We conceived of marriages and unions and everything else, so this commandment is irrelevant and obviously written by men. It's childish. And in a civilized society with educated people, completely irrelevant. Number 8. Thou shalt not steal. Another fine sentiment, but nothing that's a real contribution in terms of morals and ethics. It's a given that you wouldn't steal. So the men who wrote this were trying to instill this on others. In a civilized society, this would be a given. It's unnecessary to write it down, unless you're addressing a large group of very primitive, monkey-like creatures who couldn't understand the simple attribute of morality. Number 9. Thou shalt not bear false witness, like a priest committing pedophilia with a small child. You shouldn't say that you didn't see it. You should tell the truth and not bear false witness. Yes, I saw the priest committing pedophilia with a young boy. That would be telling the truth, as opposed to bearing false witness where you say you didn't see it. In a civilized society, this would be a given. There's no reason to write it down or tell anyone else. It should just be known. Even chimpanzees have a sense of this. In fact, far more so than Christians. And spectacular number 10, a bit of pure divine idiocy written by remarkably jealous, petty men. Thou shalt not covet. Considering the nature of the first few commandments, which are self-aggrandizing, egocentric, egotistic bullshit, thou shalt not covet, it doesn't want you to have any other god before it. Keep in mind, one of the main uses for the 10 Commandments and religion was to keep the large masses under control. So when wealth and goods were redistributed to the kings, the ones in power, the ones who wrote the Bible, to control the masses, you would be giving them huge amounts of gold, trinkets, silks, food. Your last chicken would go to the king. And it wouldn't be very advantageous for a king and his 72 soldiers to have a vast, impoverished, hungry crowd of hundreds of thousands angry at him and coveting his belongings, which were taken from the same gigantic mass. So naturally, this particular item was added, that you shouldn't covet the king's gigantic wealth, because then you would want it and might rebel against him, taking it from him, and leaving him penniless, worthless, with nothing, and no crown. So as anyone can see, the 10 Commandments are a bunch of scribblings from a childish authoritarian who was self-centered, egotistic, and egocentric, as well as authoritarian and murderous. The 10 Commandments in the Bible are about as useful to morality as a pig rectum. No offense to pig rectums.